What's up, Warriors? Welcome to another episode of the Mental Health Movement Podcast, Voice for the Voiceless. I'm your host, Chris. Today, I have a special guest. He is a moderator on the Mental Health Movement Podcast, and he's been my best friend for the past 10 years. Caleb, say what's up to the camera.
Hey, everybody. My name's Caleb, and very happy to be here. Thanks for having me on the podcast. And like he said, I'm in the mental health movement group with him. And I'm just very excited to be on the podcast today.
Yeah, and like I said, I appreciate you doing this because I know this is a pretty heavy podcast for you, and of course myself, considering the topic. Before we get into today's topic, there is a specific day of July, and yes, guys, we're already in July. Cannot believe it. July 24th is International Self-Care Day, so make sure practice self-care. Whether that's taking a walk, whether that's watching your favorite show or movie, taking an Epsom salt bath, whatever self-care means to you, be sure to practice self-care, because if I can preach self-care every podcast, I absolutely will. So going into today's topic, we're going to be talking about addiction and mental health. I know for a lot of people, especially in this pandemic, it's been a very heavy topic. It's kind of one of those things that society throws a stigma on and just doesn't really like to talk about addiction without, saying, oh, well, addicts this, addicts that. And I feel like when I do these podcasts with people, whether it's with a guest, whether it's not, I like to express that there's so much information on the internet, right? There's so much research you can do on, whatever topics I do talk about. And a lot of them that I read into, a lot of it's like self-opinion, like, oh, well, addicts don't get help for themselves because, X, Y, Z. I want to do these podcasts to make sure that that stigma is somehow broken, that there's people out there that are going through this and know that they don't have to go through it alone, that they don't have to feel ashamed for their vices. Addiction can be both either physical or behavior. First thing that comes to mind, obviously, is substance abuse, but it goes so much further than just substance. It goes further than drugs. It goes further than alcohol. It could be you're addicted to eating so much. You're sexual addiction, addicted to self-destruction is one that I brought up in a previous podcast, that sometimes you just get so consumed in doing the wrong thing for yourself that you just can't stop, because it's just one of those things where you're feeding your body a constant routine, whether that's negative or positive, and you just can't stop. And of course, self-harm, I wouldn't say it's like it's an addiction of a sort, but it's a different kind of addiction. Again, it goes to behavior. You want to feel that release that you're not getting from life. You want to feel something again. So that being said, Caleb, being as both you and I have experienced addiction and the after effects, whether it's family, so on and so forth, can you tell me why you think addiction is becoming growingly worse? Why do you think addiction is becoming a bigger problem than it ever has
been? It's a lot to do with the doctors prescribing a lot of the stuff and over prescribing in some cases. Every medical problem has an answer with a pill now. There's not a friend that I don't have that hasn't had it, that does have children that haven't had them recommended for Adderall or Ritalin. And it starts at, 5 or 6. Oh, I couldn't sit in my chair long enough, so I was given Adderall.
Right.
Oh, I have depression. Now I'm giving Xanax.
Right.
Oh, I have, pain. So now here I'm getting painkillers all the time.
Right. And, to that point too, it kind of goes into that why people don't believe in therapy or why people don't believe in doctors, because like you said, it starts somewhere, whether that's doctors, whether that's your home environment, the group of friends you have, whatever. There's always a label thrown on you for something. Like you said, you have depression. All right, here's some medicine. You have anxiety. Here's some Xanax. And once you get so used to somebody giving you something to make sure that pain goes away, you just don't stop. And I feel like with this pandemic, the last 3 years, Obviously it has felt like one very long year. And I feel like when you're confined to the four walls of your home, or you can't see family members because you couldn't travel, it's a shame that our healthcare is the way that it is, and people just genuinely don't want to help other people. It's kind of like what I said with therapy not being for everybody, because some people in the mental health field just aren't there to help people. They're just, all right, here's a pill, there's my paycheck, end of story, right?
Well, how does that make you feel?
Right, yeah, exactly. It reminds me of Freaky Friday. Obviously it was a comedy movie, but there's that scene where she doesn't know how to be a psychologist, and she's like, "Oh, just ask them how does that make you feel." And while they make a joke out of it, it's kind of something you can pull out and be like, "That's kind of how." There's quite a bit of psychologists, psychiatrists that are like that, that don't really listen, and just kind of, here's a prescription. Oh, well, you have back pain. Instead of exercising, here's some pain medication. And then you just keep feeding that demon of addiction, and it just doesn't stop. Right. So people with addiction continue to be blamed for their disease, feeling shamed and refusing to seek treatment as a result due to the stigma surrounding addiction. Why do you think there's such a big stigma with addiction, and how do you think we can help fight that stigma?
Maybe just more resources, more people talking about it, because I've known, like I've had family and, parents and stuff that are addicts, and I've always had like well, they make their own choices, they should know right from wrong, but
Right.
It's more than just knowing right from wrong. Like, you can't make them want to get better, but there should be definitely more resources besides arresting them, throwing them in jail, letting them get back out, throwing them back in jail.
Right. So I guess that just kind of goes right into a follow-up question. Do you think addiction is a disease, or do you think it's a choice? Because I had this conversation last night with a friend and basically put it as circumstantial. So
it's both. I mean, diabetes is a disease, but you can eat too much and get diabetes.
Right.
If I pound sugar for a few years straight with no exercise, I can get diabetes.
Right.
Did I choose diabetes? No, but that's the result of choices. So, I've watched my parents go through different treatment, whether it's the methadone clinic and stuff like that, and that's just swapping one addiction for another. I feel like there's some kind of trauma from their childhood that like got them to start trying substances, and once you start trying it, unless you can wake up and realize this is what I want to do, it's kind of,
at that point, it just becomes too late.
Yeah.
It's one of those things, like you said, our parents growing up and their parents before them didn't have the resources that they have now.
No.
If you had mental health struggles, they call it depression, they call it whatever, they'd lock you up and throw you in a psych ward.
That was that man up. That
Yeah,
shit deep
exactly.
down.
And that was that generations of man up. That was that generation of, oh, well, you can't have depression, you're crazy. And again, I think it goes in the same conversation that we just had about throwing a label on everything. And I know you and I have extensively talked about throwing labels on everything. I agree that all these struggles do exist. Anxiety is a thing.
I'm sure there's kids that need Adderall
Right.
and stuff like that, but you're not supposed to feel happy all the time. Like,
Right.
There's sadness, like there's ups and downs. So people immediately have one bad day and be like, "Oh, I'm depressed. I have depression."
Yeah.
Or they get like a little anxious about a big test and think like, "Oh no, I got anxiety."
Right.
It's like, no, you just felt anxious. You felt it, and then it went like it comes and goes.
And you said something that was very that I wanted to point out too, was you mentioned how somebody's having a bad day and they throw the word depression on there. That's something that has irked me for a very long time, because I have friends that we have mutual friends that throw around the word depression because something isn't going right in their life. Do I doubt their feelings? No, but I think they're misinterpreting how they're feeling. Depression isn't something you just flick a switch and be like, "Oh yeah, I'm depressed." Nope, not depressed today. there's sadness, and then there's depression. Depression, the happiest person in the world can be depressed and tomorrow not want to get out of bed for a week. It happens. And again, depression leads to addiction sometimes. And, again, addiction is not always drugs. It's not always alcohol. It could be, you just sit in bed all day, you eat, you sit in bed and just not take care of yourself. And again, that goes with the self-destruction addiction that I said before. A lot of people either aren't informed enough to be able to identify what struggles that they have. And that's probably why they go to doctors and they get prescribed like, oh, well, I've never had this happen to me before, so maybe it is depression. I was diagnosed very young with depression, and it was hereditary. It's something that is in my family that just, I didn't just wake up one day and say that I was depressed. I didn't fail a test and say, oh, well, I'm depressed now because that happened. It's something that you're born with and something that evolves, much like addiction. Addiction can evolve and can get so much worse. So that kind of leads into what signs to look for with addiction. And there was one on here, I'll read first just because it didn't click until after I kind of read into it. So increased tolerance is a sign of addiction. I never put that together with a sign of addiction because I know people that have drank their entire life and, oh, well, they can have 20 beers and not get drunk, or they can have 10 beers and not get drunk.
Yes.
I never put that with addiction. I just thought it was well, then that's just who they are. They can tolerate.
They're not a lightweight,
right?
Stuff like that.
Exactly. So it's interesting when you research addiction and what exactly it is, because there are people that may not label themselves as an addict, but alcoholics, whatever you're addicted to substance wise, there's
you're never an addict when you can have access to it. It's the days when you run out and have the money to get it and can't get it. It's when you realize like, oh shit. It's like I've had talked to my dad and stuff about their pill addiction back in the day.
Right.
And long story short, the guy prescribed my mom the Oxy 30s or whatever, and my dad was upset because they weren't perk 10s or some shit. And excuse my language.
Oh no.
And she like word for word was like, oh no, the doctor told me like one of these is like 3 perks. She's like, my dad stopped and was like, oh, and I ate 3 of them.
Oh,
and he said right there I knew I was done. He's like, we went about a good 6 or 7 months without not having them. It's like then we couldn't get them one day, and that's when we realized you don't realize you're an addict throughout the whole process. They just think that you wake up one day and you're on the streets, but it's like it's the ones that have the money that can get it 24/7 are still addicts. People that can go to the bar every day. Oh, I'm not an addict. I could quit whenever.
Right.
No, you're addicted to going to the bar every day or drinking every day, whatever the case may be. Getting pills, even weed, stuff like that. Because I personally smoke, but I smoke a lot, probably more than I should. But
yeah, and I know you and I had this conversation about smoking weed as well, where while it's not the same as doing heroin at all, it doesn't do that kind of harm to your body. It is a psychological thing in terms of addiction where, some people can't go a minute without it. I know people that are really bad with smoking. And again, nothing against anybody who smokes. If it helps you, it helps you. But again, I think it's time for society to identify that, it's a personality thing, but it's also a psychological thing too. Like if you tell yourself you can't go a day without smoking, you're an addict. That's just cut dry. I'm not gonna sugarcoat it, but I feel like that's something, it's not something go to rehab for because you're smoking weed, whatever. You get hungry and all that stuff, whatever. But, I feel like if you're putting all your time, all your money, everything, you're an addict. It's people that smoke weed, can, I guess, stop essentially whenever they want.
Yeah, and there's a difference for, people who do need it for whatever,
like back pain,
cancer, pains, stuff like that.
Right.
Especially now that they're becoming legalized. We are in legal state, so
Right.
we're not condoning anyone doing anything illegal in their states.
Right. But other signs of addiction is a significant time with substance and behavior changes. If you notice that somebody can't go without something for, like an hour, like nicotine is a great example of addiction. My dad cannot go longer than 10 minutes without a cigarette because it's a psychological thing. His stress activates and his anger just kind of goes hand in hand with that. And that's something that obviously that whole generation went through was cigarette addiction.
Oh yeah, same thing with my dad. My dad went away for a year on a vacation, so to speak. And first hour he's out, not even first few minutes. He's like, "Oh, I was at the store for a pack of cigarettes." And you just went a whole year without them,
Right?
Because you couldn't get them. But now that you can get them and they're available, it's immediately you gotta have it.
Right, and kind of like what you were saying to the having access to it opposed to not having access to it.
Yeah.
Yeah, the behavior change is something that I feel like is probably the most obvious when it comes to addiction, just because you notice like somebody's change in behavior if they're not drinking all the time, and if they have withdrawals. Withdrawals is another sign of addiction.
Short tempered.
Yeah, yeah. And a lot of people that are in that group with that person sometimes won't really put two and two together because they're so used to seeing that person, use, so to speak. And it's difficult to what's the word I'm looking for? It's difficult to help somebody with an addiction problem when you don't realize that they're addicted to something,
or when they don't want to accept that. Like, I've never, like, with personal friends that I've called out, it's whether my parents, no, it's not a prize. Never. 99.9% of the people that have addiction problems aren't going to be like, yeah, I'm addicted, but fuck it. Like,
right.
They just, to their mind, in their head, it's not a problem. Because in their mind, they can stop whenever they
right.
want.
It's like that normal routine for them.
They just don't want to stop.
Right.
So they're like, oh, I can't stop if I wanted to. And it's like, no, you can't.
Right.
Whether it's your friend that has a drink every day after work, that's how So I've had friends that every day after work, it's just one beer after work. I'm like, yeah, bro, until it's 2 beers. And then the next time it's 3 beers.
I hate that the first thing I think of is Stone Cold. 1 beer, 2 beers,
3 beers, another beer.
Shot of vodka.
But yeah, it's just, there's people that are addicted to self-destructing habits, like they, not going to the gym or not, and trying to be like, oh, well, I'm putting other matters first, but, like you got to putting my physical health last, and it's not eating eating McDonald's or fast food every night of the week, or
right,
consistently throughout the week.
Right, and some people are addicted to spending money too, and that's a psychological thing.
Also stems for probably being denied stuff in your childhood, so now you have the money to buy, which I've been guilty of myself.
Same,
like
absolutely.
Like I'm an adult now, I can buy whatever I want. That video game, done for. Oh, I can smash a whole thing of Oreos tonight because I'm an adult.
Right.
I want to eat like shit all day long. Who's gonna stop me?
Yeah, I've had conversations with people about that, saying, "Oh, well, why do you buy all this stuff?" And I'm like, I never really had anything bought for me like that as growing up. Like merchandise for wrestling or
going to wrestling shows.
I never
a video game collection that I barely even play, but I got every new game when it comes out.
Right, and it's just one of those things where, again, having the access to it now that we're older and we can spend our own money, opposed to our parents spending their money on something for us. You know what I mean? And when you finally get to that point of being of age to buy your own alcohol, or that age of buying scratch off tickets is another one. Again, spending money.
But it's weird. Once I turned 21, I pretty much never drank really after that.
Yeah, the last time I drank really like a lot was my 21st birthday, and that was almost.
But yeah, I don't know. I just feel like drinking it was more of an allure when I was in high school, and like the year or two after.
And some people just kind of fell into that
allure. As I turned 21, I was like, it's not.
Right.
I don't know. Like I've always just like I just started smoking more, and that to me, besides how much you can spend on it, it's not really the negative side effects aren't there as much. You know, some people it makes their anxiety worse or whatever. For me, it just helps me eat. And,
Right.
you know, keeps the anxiety. Well, I don't know if it's
Yeah.
keeps the worry down.
Kind of going into that the partying conversation. Do you feel the current like not restrictions, the current penalties for DUIs are enough? Do you feel like they're too harsh? Do you feel like somebody should lose their license or like right away and not be able to get it back? Because again, I know you've had to experience it, but your situation was a little bit different than an actual like.
I was, probably one of the reasons why I really don't drink too much was right after my 21st birthday, they tried pulling me over for a DUI, arrested me. I wasn't drunk, blew 0-0 at the jail. But I've had friends that have gone through DUIs. And at first, I was like, because everyone's had that friend, I could drive great drunk, blah, blah, blah. And at first, I thought the penalties were kind of harsh when one of my friends was going through it because they didn't have a lawyer. So they got all these fines, no license for 6 to 9 months. You got to pay a bunch of money to get a hardship license.
Right.
But then through the course of when they dropped my DUI to a reckless driving, I had to do a victim impact payment.
Mm-hmm.
And that was pretty eye-opening when you hear like the mothers and fathers who lost kids from people that made that choice to drink and drive. So it's like,
and that's exactly it. It's the choice thing.
The thing is I feel like the penalties should be harsh because when I got the DUI and knew I wasn't drunk, the only thing I told my lawyer was, I don't care what happens, I don't want a DUI on my record because I knew the shit that comes along with it.
Right.
So I feel like that they should, keep it like, especially because they get harsher. God forbid you get in an accident or, because I've had friends that have gotten in DUI accidents and got super lucky or been on the receiving end.
I was going to say, as hard as it is to talk about it, I feel it's healthier for me to talk about it instead of just keeping back in my mind, like, oh, well, I wish I would have talked about it when we were recording so I could say it now. The girl that took Santi's life refused to take a sobriety test. A year later, like 2 months ago, she finally had her license revoked. And, in high school, I remember them doing the drunk driving simulator
and shit like
and that. It was very violent. And, when I think of drunk driving, I know the intention of those videos is kind of like, oh, well, remember what happens when you drive drunk or could happen. I've driven drunk one time in my life and I will never do it again because I remember feeling so paranoid. I remember just driving as cautiously as humanly possible. And with DUIs now, I feel if there's an accident involved and the conversation of that person was probably drunk because of how the accident happened, there should be no way and no reason that somebody can refuse a sobriety test. That's just me. But I feel like if there's a death involved, I feel 100% she should have gotten a sobriety test. And again, it was a hard conversation for me to talk about out loud. And with therapy has given me the ability to talk about these things openly and be able to share my story with you guys. And I feel DUI penalties sometimes aren't enough because there's repeat offenders. And I've seen people get their license back after like 3 DUIs. And it's just one of those things where the fines might not be high enough. The courts might not be strict enough. And, all these programs and stuff that they're doing with high school kids just doesn't seem to be enough. Drunk driving is a problem. And I guess it starts at home, obviously, but it also in part goes with the peers that person is surrounded by. Most of these parents, obviously, as you've seen, rely on these electronics. to babysit their kids, and they're watching whatever movie, or they're playing whatever game, and said games have alcohol and substance stuff, or it's same with the movies, and that just kind of gets drilled in the back of their head where, oh well, this guy's driving drunk, so it must be a normal thing.
And the thing is like we grew up playing GTA and stuff and driving drunk and all that on GTA, but there was still like a separation of videos and real life, and now it's become so integrated with society that this generation is, I see it with the young, like my friends that like have sisters that have kids and stuff that are 15 and under, like they're so everything, where from school to, I remember like the computer lab day was like a special thing in school. Right. Now it's like every class has iPads for all the kids to work on. They don't know how to have real conversations with people because they're so used to texting.
Yeah.
It's just, it all stems from that. But I feel the DUI penalties are harsh enough because there is people that do drink that one time and get caught and don't do it again because they, it sucked.
Again, it's circumstantial.
And it's like, you can't make the DUI penalties so harsh that it's one time someone fucks it up and they get their life completely destroyed forever.
I feel like unless they take a life.
Yeah, no, that's the thing. The DUI penalties differ when there's
something like injury.
Well, it'll be DUI with injury, that injury/death would be the official charge for that. And there's DUI second offense, and it's within certain years. Like if you get 2 of them within 5 years, it's a repeat offense, and it's like worse than if you get your first one and you got another one 7 years down the road.
Right.
So I had to go through. They pretty much they dropped mine to a reckless driving. I wasn't drunk. I was speeding though, and I still had to go through the victim impact panel, which was annoying, but it really did like I tell you this, I never drink, and like I never drink really, but if Christina drinks or anything, I'm always the one driving. I don't, just because it's just not worth it.
Yeah, absolutely. And again, it goes back to choice. It's you choose to drink and drive, and the person that hopefully is with you while you're out chooses whether or not they're going to drive you home, be your designated driver.
Luckily, I always had parents that were like, if you're ever somewhere and someone's drunk, call us. We won't be mad, type of shit.
Right.
But I'd never, like as a kid, never, like I had friends that would drink and drive, but I never got in the car with them while they were drinking. So I'm like, dude, that's just not going to end well.
Right. Yeah. And I've had people when I was in high school, drunk drive, and some have resulted in death, and obviously Santi's situation, he ended up gone, and like you said, it's all circumstantial, and I feel the DUI penalties are pretty strict, but
it's a lot cheaper to Uber.
Yeah,
so like
exactly.
Just Uber. If you can't afford the Uber, then you can't get a designated driver, then you can't afford to go out drink.
Right, exactly. And
spending your last $20 at the bar.
For anybody who does listen to this episode and knows people that have a drinking problem or any kind of substance problem, the best thing you can do is, I don't want to say support their habit. That's not the right wording. Be there for them. Exactly. And, be with them in their hardest times, because I know so many people that just kind of bury their friends under the rug over their addictions. Unless they're physically harming you or causing physical and or psychological harm to your life, there's no reason to shut somebody out. There's no reason to bury a friendship over their struggles. Addiction and mental health, obviously it's a mental health struggle, and that's one of the reasons I wanted to cover it, because like mental illness and all the subjects that we could talk about endlessly on mental health, addiction is probably one of the most stigmatized topics, because it's such a taboo subject, kind of like suicide prevention or just having depression. It's all those taboo subjects that nobody likes to openly talk about, because you shame your friends for drinking a lot, you shame your friends for their pill addiction, whatever it is, and not enough people are there for each other. And I I don't just say this on podcasts, guys. I try to practice everything that I preach. Be there for each other any way you can. You know, I'm not telling you to give your life savings to somebody who has an alcohol problem.
No, you don't got to be there for him financially. Like with the wreck situation, there's times where he knew he had a problem and was fucking up. He was like, "Hey, bro, just thanks for not ditching me and not talking to me just because of the shit I'm doing or whatever." So I knew he was making, the choices he was making and stuff.
Yeah.
And there's certain people that just like, oh, well, that he's wilding out. He's doing this, he's doing that. I'm not going to talk to him anymore because he's making bad choices. And you don't got to support it. Like, I was supporting what he was doing, but I wasn't just going to not try to be there for him. I'd be like, hey, bro, maybe you should
ease back,
relax a little bit,
right.
Skip a day, have breaks.
Yeah. And that's the most important part. And I'm glad that you're able to openly talk about it, because I know it's such a sore subject, and I wasn't going to bring it up just out of respect for you and our friendship, but at the same time, I'm really happy that you can come to peace with yourself to be able to talk about it openly.
Oh yeah, but it's got to be, because like you said, the whole stigmatism around. I grew up with my parents like, oh, don't give your money to the bum, so they're going to go buy alcohol or drugs with it.
Right.
And it's like, y'all are buying alcohol or drugs with it too. You're just not homeless, so you're not like
kind of like that pedestal kind of thing.
Yeah, like the pot calling the kettle black, like because he's homeless and an addict and you're not homeless and an addict, that makes it better.
Right. And
you're just functioning, but people don't want to, because there's people who are addicts that go to work, maintain their jobs, maintain their house, pay most of their bills on time and stuff, but are still buying pills every week. They're just functioning addicts, and they think that because they're functioning that they're not they don't know
that they're not a problem.
Yeah. Oh, I don't have a problem. I go to work and pay my bills. My bills are paid. I can do whatever I want after that.
Yeah.
You can do whatever you want, but sometimes you gotta do what you should, whether it's what you want or not.
Yeah. And that's kind of my dad's a functioning addict. He doesn't drink nearly as much as he used to, but he was a functioning addict for a very long time. He would drive home drunk more times than I could count. And I remember one time he drove home drunk and he got into an accident on his motorcycle. And I guess the way that he landed, a bottle went through his back.
Yes, to say is at the time where he fucked up his back on Main Street or
I think Main Street or Massachusetts. And the bottle went into his back, I guess a couple more inches in, and he would have paralyzed himself. He was so drunk he didn't know he had a gash in his back. And a little graphic for my listeners, but my brother ended up driving him to the hospital. I think he got 72 stitches altogether, inside and outside his back. And he hasn't been the same since. He has driven home drunk probably as long as I can remember. And he was a functioning addict. He wouldn't wake up 4 a.m. and be like, oh, well, I'm going to drink a beer. But he would go to the bar a lot and drive home drunk a lot.
He can even be subtle. My grandfather came home every day from work with a 6-pack of Ice House. One of them already open. That's not a big deal. That's just a 6-pack after work. I have friends. It's just a beer after work. I just have one beer.
Right.
Only have 1 or 2 a night. I have had friends that started, I only take 1 pain pill every couple of days, blah, blah, blah. And even when I was going through with my teeth and got prescribed pain pills, I noticed I would take one day, and the next day, if I didn't take one, I would be super irritable.
Yeah.
Just really short.
That's how I was when I had my shoulder surgery.
I was like, I do not even that. And I know I have an addictive personality because of my parents.
Right.
I just try to focus it on good and less bad habits.
Right. And when I was prescribed the Percocet that I had, I was really paranoid of what Percocet would do to me, because I don't take pain pills. I don't like the idea of pain pills because I've seen what pain pills can do to people. When I took them, I remember we went to New York City, and I didn't take a Percocet because we were walking around New York City, and you don't want to walk around that city looped out. And I just remember being in so much pain and just so angry because I was hurting so bad. And then, like you said, when you take it again, you feel okay. And I have an addictive personality, but it's not extreme. I know when to say when. I know my limits on alcohol or whatever it is, and I know how my body reacts to certain substances, so I don't take it. Pain pills, I will never touch ever again. I don't care whatever happens to me. I will never take pain pills again. Percocet was a terrible experience.
I don't know, man. Teeth pain will change that.
You're right.
I don't like teeth pain. Nope. Do not deal with that.
Yeah. So another sign of addiction is relationship and social problems. We've seen examples of when people are not, drinking, or when people are not, high on whatever they're taking, and then it just kind of like push everybody away because, like you said, if you're pointing out somebody's struggles, you're like, hey man, like take a break, take it easy, and they get all pissed off at you, like, oh, well, you don't understand what I'm going through, blah, 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 blah. And, it's just one of those things where, again, you have to have that emotional intelligence to look out for these signs. Another sign of addiction is obviously withdrawal. We've seen people have withdrawal symptoms. I think that's probably the most obvious, next to the substance and behavior change, would be withdrawals, because you can tell when people are not on whatever they're so accustomed to.
Personality is completely different.
Right.
Super snappy, irritable.
Yeah. So
physically sick.
To follow up on a question, when do you feel that addiction should be addressed? Like, is there like a line that you draw on when it needs to be talked about?
It depends, because there's, like, I feel like personally to students and stuff, maybe around like middle school, high school, because that's when they'll start. Well, I guess now it'd be like vaping, and because that's like, I remember I went to kind of a chartered, like, private middle school. So those kids weren't really exposed to anything, but I had friends that went to public school, and we'd meet up with their other friends, and they'd be eighth graders smoking cigarettes and shit like that, because everything at that point in age is cool. That's you can't do.
Yeah.
But I also feel it needs to, definitely be, because there's, a 5-year-old kid right now that dad's always in a bad mood until he takes a sip of beer, and he doesn't know that it's beer. He just, dad drinks this magic drink.
Right.
I actually remember seeing an interview with Ozzy Osbourne where he was like, my dad was always an asshole until he would go to the bar and get this magic potion that I thought was a kid, and he'd come back and be nice as ever. So I thought that stuff's really great and awesome. It made my dad from being mean to being fun and having a good time.
Right.
And it's almost circumstantial, but it definitely has to be starting middle school.
I feel when you notice somebody using whatever addiction as like a codependency kind of thing, like you depend on that high to get you through the day, or you depend on that, like you said, alcohol to make you feel better. I definitely feel when you start noticing behavior change is when you should start addressing it, when they're unable to fulfill their obligations as an adult.
Okay, so you meant like we should bring it up to your friends if you notice.
Right.
Oh, okay.
I
thought you
wrong.
meant like at what age should people?
That's a good answer too.
Kids should be aware of like what because even now, I mean, you try to take a phone away from one of these 8th graders or 6th graders, and they're going to have a panic attack.
I mean, it's the same with elementary school kids, man.
Yeah, it's their whole world's an electronic device.
Right.
It's not. The world was forever a better place when you just went about your day and
come home when the lights come out.
You come home and you check your messages at the end of the day instead of constantly worrying about who's doing what and where. That's another addiction thing, like where you're addicted to
social media.
It's even social media, but like it's always seeing like, oh, this person's doing that. This person, I'm not rich yet. I'm not doing this yet. I need to, and I get trapped into the cycle too, where it's, you just like, if none of this shit existed, what would you be doing right now?
Right.
Like, that's what I try to like focus myself on.
Yeah.
If I wasn't, there wasn't a Facebook for me to scroll down and an Instagram for me to look at. What would I be doing with my time?
Right. I mean, when you think about it, how we grew up, we killed time by going outside and making up games, manhunt, whatever
Watching
it was.
TV, doing something, reading books. Now it's just like I get an update that tells me I've been on my phone for 7 hours a day.
Right.
Like, fuck.
And it's just one of those things where, again, it falls back on parents with these kids. I feel there's parents that are responsible for a lot of addiction problems.
Oh yeah, well, because as soon as this whole world is a quick give me now world. I remember I had like a sort of humbling experience. I was at an ATM and I was bitching about how fast it was, like slow it was going. And this old guy next to me was like, "In my day, we didn't even have ATM."
Right.
Be thankful you're not stuck seeing the bank only from 9 to 5.
Right.
And I was like, okay, because now this world, I want food, instantly get it on my phone. I want to go on, whatever. Everything's instant.
I mean, you should look at grocery shopping. Shopping, you can just order on your phone.
It's like, oh, I'm feeling sad. Instantly take a pill and get happy. Oh, I'm feeling in pain. Instantly take a pill and now I don't feel in pain.
The era of easy access to everything is a plague.
Oh, I can't focus. Let me take something. Boom. Now I'm focused.
Right. Yeah.
There's no hard work, and even with the participation trophies, and kids don't know how to experience upset or loss without.
Kids don't know how to be kids,
and it completely melts down their world the first time they hear no or can't get something.
And the crazy part about that too, though, is
lose their shit and don't
is
know how to
now
function.
Our generation is working on trying to get rid of that, but our parents' generation is adjusting to the next generation of how, oh, well, you can't get hired, or you can be hired if you meet this criteria. We have to meet a quota. We're going to hire you, but not hire you. Life experience versus somebody who went to school and knows absolutely nothing.
Yeah.
Again, participation award stuff. Like, obviously, I worded that a little shitty, and people that go to school, perfectly fine. Whatever. You go to college, you work your ass off for 8 years. That's great. But I'm just saying more so for the people like Caleb and I and so many others that I know, we work for everything that we have. While we might not be book smart, quote unquote, we have had to experience life by getting hit in the back of the head with a shovel over and over and over. Again, the people that are in school and can complete 8 years in today's generation, I commend you for working your ass off, being able to do that. But some of us didn't have the luxury of experiencing college the way that you did, or experiencing college in general. Anyway, kind of veering off topic a little bit. So for treatment, thankfully there's a lot of treatment options, and there's two specific programs on here that I wrote down just because I've had to go to these meetings with my mom when she was going through her addiction problems. NA, which is Narcotics Anonymous, and of course there's Sex Anonymous, there's Alcohol Anonymous. Me personally, for somebody who has sat through an NA meeting, I don't feel it's something that can work in 2022 the way that it's programmed out.
I did 4, I was like Alcohol Anonymous meetings because of that reckless driving DUI stuff, and to me, it just felt like just a step to get through like the process, like just another thing they needed me to do and pay money for,
right?
Just to make them feel like they did something to try to veer you away. Because like the lady was a nice lady, but it was just pretty much everyone else just telling stories about how they got caught drunk driving. None of them were like, what could you do different? Oh, not drive? Oh, well,
right.
Like, it was just an extra curricular step. Like those people, if they went out and didn't drink and drive anymore, it wasn't because of the courses, it's because of the financial burden that it cost and the inconvenience that it, which is great. At least something deterred them from drunk driving. But the Alcohol Anonymous course is really,
I feel like unless you're like willing to accept religion into your life, I feel like NA and AA isn't for
See,
somebody like myself.
the AA I went to wasn't a really big like, oh, you should replace alcohol with Jesus.
Yeah, no, not all
type of
programs are
place.
like
It
that.
wasn't, because I don't know if it was court ordered or what, but it was just like, everyone tell your story about how you got here. Oh,
They might
why-
also have a different like way of doing
Yeah.
Alcoholics Anonymous opposed to narcotics. Because
yeah,
narcotics, it's kind of like all the steps are, the first step is admitting that you have a problem.
yeah,
And,
Second
then
step
there's the
is
serenity
choice.
prayer in there too, which, name drops God. And, a lot of those people are
yeah. That's just,
open arms with religion. So
From-
in a sense, NA is kind of like going into a religion
Yeah,
and being able to read the Bible and accept all the things that are going on in your life and try to adjust your life around the program that they had built for you.
and it's funny because my dad read a lot of the Bible when he was away
Yeah.
for the last year and stuff, and I even told him like, the Bible is just it's another, in my opinion, like another codependency thing. Like there's people that don't stress or have anxiety about anything because like some people would worry about trying to get the job interview. Oh, if I got this job interview, I need to get the job.
Right.
Other people, oh, it's in God's hands. Whether I get the job or not, it's what God wants me to do. Now that just took all the worry someone that like me or you would have about securing the job. If God doesn't want it to be, then it's like, I personally, I'm a believer in me.
Yeah.
I make stuff happen for me and I don't make stuff happen for me.
Right.
It's a lot of self responsibility, but I'm not going to be like, yeah, it's because of God that I did this or didn't get this.
Right.
Like it's all on you. And that's a lot of people that, it's easier to put the blame or whatever.
I
on
like the
God.
people that can talk about religion, but also be realistic about it too.
Yeah.
And, the Bible is essentially like a guideline for some people. It's, for me personally, I can't relate myself to religion. It's just not for me. Of course, that's not a knock on anybody who does
Yeah. No, people
read the
who,
Bible, but
it helps your anxiety. If you believe God's in control of everything, then so be it. That's
right.
great.
And,
And that's pretty much what it's for.
And then while you have me, who's a realist, where anxiety is a psychological thing that has nothing to do with said higher power, in my opinion. Again, not knocking anybody.
And I have moments where like I'll have anxiety about shit, but I just try to. It's always you versus you.
Right. Exactly.
It's always like, okay, no, I'm not. Like this isn't going to happen. This is like, I really try to focus. Like I know it's cliche to say and shit, but it's not even so much that I try to focus on the positives. I just try not to focus on the negatives.
Yeah. Yeah. And for some people that works. Some people, you can just block out whatever negative noise is going on in your life. And
it's not even that it's blocking it out. It's just trying to focus on the positive things harder.
Right.
So like, yeah, you can still hear and take into into consideration the negative things that can and could happen, but
at the end of the day, like you said, you got to make things happen.
Like I'm not going to go and get in my car every day. I try to like. There's some people who put the worst into every situation, but then they'll go and drive in their car. Like I'm like, oh, you don't think you're going to get in a car accident? They're like, no. I'm like, well, why do you think bad about every other situation?
Right.
I don't. So you gotta. You are almost what you focus on, so to speak. But you're also, when people were given those labels as for their whole life, oh, you have anxiety, oh, you have depression,
oh, you're bipolar, you're this or that.
Like, you hear you have depression from the time you were 10 to you're 25. Of course, you're going to be depressed because you've been told you have depression now.
Right.
I know it's more than there's.
Yeah. Obviously, there's more to that. Yeah, but I get what you're saying.
If you're constantly thinking you're depressed, you're not. Like you gotta almost reroute your thinking.
Yeah, absolutely. No, it's kind of like I don't remember who said it, but it's kind of like if you have to constantly say how oppressed you are you really oppressed?
Yeah. Like, oh, my depression. I'm just too depressed today, guys. Or my anxiety. It's
right.
Like you don't have anxiety. Yeah. Like everyone feels nervous about shit.
Yeah, and I feel like the not wanting to do anything is a very real experience, but I feel most of the people that go through that extreme of depression that don't want to go out and don't want to do anything, don't really broadcast it to people.
No,
You know,
they're the ones that are like, oh, I'm just not feeling well today. I'm just gonna relax at the house.
yeah, and it's just one of those things where, again, emotional intelligence is a really big part in how you deal with certain situations, and depression is one of them. You know, you have the ability to navigate uh, what you focus on, like you said.
It's like when you feel like you don't want to leave the house, there's some of the times where you got to force yourself to leave.
Yeah,
Whether it's
I
just
agree.
going outside to walk around your yard, or driving up to around the block, or walking around the block.
And you know, once you set that routine for yourself to force yourself out, it just kind of becomes part of your routine. It's like, okay, well, I go out at this time, or you know, you sit outside for a half hour at this time, whatever it is. So
Even if it's just like opening the windows, and because I feel like some people just lock themselves in and don't get any fresh air, and you have to like, I don't know, like there's been days where I've just been around the house the whole day, and it's like you just start even feeling more and more like shut in.
yeah,
And yeah, but that's the thing is today is that we can do that and still feel like we're connected because we scroll on Facebook and we see
everything.
posts and shit. So it's like, well,
Right.
but you gotta sometimes just go outside and just, like we're alive.
Yeah. So for other treatment options, there's the obvious cognitive behavior therapy, which, you know, is basically regular therapy like I go to. Talk about your struggles and what you're going through, and basically come up with a plan for healing. Again, I will stress this every podcast just because I feel it's important to. Therapy is not for everybody. You have to be able to put in the work. You have to be able to be open and honest with not only yourself, but the person that you chose to try and help you. Then you have, I'm going to butcher this word, so I apologize, the dialectical behavior therapy. I had to look this up because I've never heard of it before. Basically, what it is, it's the same exact thing as the EMDR therapy, where they try to retrain your brain. You know, they basically try to get you to re-experience something and try to change your way of thinking
or response to it.
Right, like changing your response to said situations that essentially had you start your addiction. Then you have family therapy. When I read this, the first thing I thought of was intervention. I've never heard of family therapy other than maybe like parent and child and maybe couple therapy, but I guess
maybe like
family therapy is kind of like intervention, I feel like.
Maybe, but confronting the shit your parents did to you, that's
that's kind of got you where you're at.
Started what right. Your addiction, like, oh, you did this to me when I was a kid. So I feel it's kind of from looking from the outside in, but I've been in it with my own personal experience and stuff too. They have to want to not do drugs.
Exactly. Right.
You literally have to physically choose to not do it.
Right.
And until you want to do that,
and I feel that strikes
nothing
up
on the outside besides locking them away and
right.
keeping them like cutting off their access to it.
And I feel like it kind of strikes up that
which is obviously an extreme. So my mom and dad and everyone, you have to actively choose to not do it. And until they want to do it, you look at all the rich people they put in this super most expensive
rehab programs
and stuff. People that go to jail for 5 years and get out immediately start doing that. You have to want to not do it.
Right. And
I talked to recovery once that they're like, I literally have to every day wake up and choose to not do drugs.
Yeah. It kind of strikes up that conversation where that we talked about earlier is the choice versus disease thing. And again, while it is circumstantial, I feel like a choice is heavily influenced on addiction. And I know that kind of gets into a heated debate with a lot of people who have either experienced the loss and addiction or are going through addiction themselves. And again, it's a very heated topic.
I said it's a mixture of both.
Mm-hmm.
because of you could be predisposed to there's some people who can take drugs and alcohol and not be addicted and not let it control their lives. There's some people that can't. And it's a very fine line. I mean, obviously you do, no one wakes up and it's just like born. Well, I mean, yes, technically you could be, but no one's like, you don't, when you're growing up 5, 6, 7 years old, you're not a drug addict. So at some point in time in your life, you chose to take something or ingest it or whatever. And whether you got addicted to it because of your the addiction gene, ability, whatever that runs in your blood, or just repeatedly, people don't realize it, but they're choosing to when you choose to have a beer with your buddies every day after work, and then all of a sudden your buddies aren't there, but you're still going to have a beer because you need to have a beer. That's what you do.
Right.
It wakes up. I mean, people have caffeine's the biggest addiction. People don't talk about that. People that are don't talk to me till I have my coffee and shit, and it's like
it's a real thing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But everything is an addiction at some point level.
So there is a treatment on here that I wrote down mainly because I disagree with it. Maybe it has helped somebody that does listen to this podcast at some point, but the abbreviation is MAT, which is medicine-assisted treatment. I think that if you're trying to get somebody off of drugs, the last thing you want to do is give them medicine to get off of said drugs, right? Am I wrong for that mentality?
Yeah, it could be a mixture of both. Because my parents, when I was in like 5th grade, they used to, growing up, the first few years I knew them, they would argue a lot. And then for like a few months in a row, they just really weren't arguing anymore. And they were like, yeah, we're going to a doctor's and stuff. So I thought they were going to like some kind of therapist or psychologist. They were going to this place called the methadone clinic. Methadone is another form of opiate, but it blocks other, like if you do methadone, you can't go out and do pills and stuff because it won't work. And essentially at that point, they were trading one drug for another. And I watched now, and this may not be true for all facilities in places, across America, but I watched them go there from the time I was in 5th grade till a year after I graduated high school. And the only reason why they stopped was when my Medicaid stopped when I turned 18 to stop paying for my mom to go there. And they cut her down from 330 milligrams, which is like what would a normal oxy pill is 30 milligrams. So she was getting 330 milligrams of methadone a day, every day. And as soon as you can't pay them, they start cutting you in half every week. So the next week you get cut in half. The week after that, they cut that half in half, and they keep until you're done. And that was like I remember my parents telling me they used to have to beg them to like lower their dosage down.
Jesus.
Because they're in that game, it's a money game. If you got people that, I mean, dude, think about 52 weeks a year, and they went there for 9, 10 years. I mean, that's
insane.
Yeah, it's 5,200 a year times 10, 15. That's off each person. And it's like, it's so like, yeah, it can help if they were to do it effectively and like lower your dosage like every couple months by like, of these like a safe amount. And then eventually we're like, oh, you get to like where you don't need it anymore.
Yeah.
But you still have to actively choose to not go out and do street drugs.
Right.
Which
like,
still comes down to the choice aspect of it.
Like when I read that as a treatment option, the first thing that came to mind was the meth clinics that they have in Portland, Oregon. When I first heard of them, I thought it was just kind of one of those things. Oh, well, it's the news. They fabricate something, whatever. They have people go to a clinic and safely do meth. In what world?
Sure, it's not meth.
I'm sorry, not meth, heroin. I apologize. But either way,
you sure it's not methadone?
Yeah, no, heroin. I'm sorry.
Okay, like safe injection sites.
Yeah,
or some shit where it's like.
In what world do we live in where we not inspire? What's the word? We encourage people to do heroin,
or like accept it and
like again. I'm not gonna bash people for their addictions. I'm gonna bash the state and or government for allowing something like that to happen.
Yeah, if you're going to do heroin, you might as well do it safely. For we got you covered. Like, no, how
I mean, that's kind of like
instead of having safe injection sites, how about you have more rehab and
right,
like treatment centers,
I just I can't
counseling.
I can't like mentally comprehend the positives of a heroin clinic.
Like, besides being there to catch them as they overdose, that's about the only.
Like I don't know, man. That really rubs me the wrong way. And
That's just kind of like, instead of trying to fix the problem, it's more of like, oh well, people are going to do heroin, might as well let them do it safely and not,
right.
which I feel like
There's like obviously you got to punish people for possessing it and selling it and stuff, but I feel like it should go more than just which we spoke about earlier. You get arrested, you get out, you get arrested, you get out, you get arrested, you go steal some shit from Walmart,
right.
You get out. It's just a constant cycle.
It's crazy.
It's a drain on our tax dollars. I'd rather them, instead of arresting them every time they caught someone with dope, they send them to a rehab to
or like help them find resources.
Yeah, it's just not a lot available.
And again, going back to that statement of the finding of the resources thing is, whether it's mental health, whether it's addiction, whatever you're going through, there are more people. Me personally, I feel like there's more people in the industry that are doing it for a paycheck opposed to actually helping somebody. It's so much easier to write a prescription, to refill a prescription for somebody than it is to actually help them.
Oh yeah.
I think in 2022 we're in a lot better of a place than we were pre-pandemic in terms of getting people help. But at the same time, when I had my last checkup, they have you write on the application, are you depressed and have you had suicidal thoughts and etc. I never had that growing up. They never had that when I was in high school and the time that I almost took my life. They never had any of that stuff. Now,
check that you would have been carted off and Baker acted.
Right. And now they read back your application. Hey, it says that, you have depression, or it says that you've had suicidal thoughts. Like, do you need help looking for a therapist or something? And I was a little taken back when she asked me, and I'm like, I actually have a therapist right now, and she's great. But again, 2022, we're in a kind of a better place in terms of finding resources, but we can do so much better. Like he said, with arresting people for possession or whatever they're getting arrested for, instead of just we're throwing you in jail and you're going to get released in 6 months, have them follow a program, have them get resources that is actually going to help them. I just don't understand where our leaders just have that gap where why wouldn't we put more money towards keeping people alive opposed to just letting somebody take their own life with addiction or taking their own life with mental health struggles because they're not getting the resources, and this whole topic brings out a lot of emotion in me because I've had people close to me who have passed away due to addiction, or taking their life. I had a best friend in high school take his life. And again, those resources weren't there. We're in a better place now, but we can always do better, And
I feel like a lot of the stuff comes down to like state funding, but I feel like the awareness in our generation and younger is a lot more there.
Absolutely.
That it's not just some hobo on the side of the road with an addiction problem. That it's just not someone that's depressed and don't talk to him, he's depressed.
But I also feel like it's a double-edged sword with that too, though, is a lot of people use that awareness as just a hashtag, as just let me post this for attention. Not saying that everybody who's sharing said awareness posts are doing it for attention.
And like that's that sucks. But even if people are sharing it for attention, at least it's getting out there.
Yeah, I guess.
It's like the people that buy the band T-shirts that don't listen to the band.
Right.
Hey, they may not listen to Metallica, but they bought Metallica T-shirt and support Metallica. So
right. Hey, I love Steven Tyler. Who's that? The lead singer of the shirt you're wearing.
Yeah, it's whatever.
Yeah.
Teach their own. But I feel like the only problem with awareness is more wrong self-diagnosis.
Right. Throwing that label on
you
yourself.
see a commercial. do you have depression? Do you do this? Do this? And Zoloft is right for you.
Right.
And you're like, oh no, you go to your doctor with the predetermined, it's like Googling, oh, I have a headache. And you Google why you have a headache. And now you're like, oh fuck, I'm dying.
I might have a tumor in my brain because I have a headache. And
Yeah,
again,
it's
oh my
just-
God, man.
You got to bring awareness, but in the right
Circumstances, in the right way. Yeah.
Not like, oh, anyone who feels sad is depressed. Because,
And the most important
you're not gonna
part,
feel happy 24/7.
yeah,
Like, am I like not particularly happy today, but I'm not like in a bad mood.
Yeah.
Not like I'm just relaxed, like fine. Like it's
so the final two treatments I have written down on here kind of go hand in hand, and that's coming up with an exercise routine and or just changing your routines in general. I'm assuming in rehab clinics they have people just kind of, all right, well, instead of taking pills or taking this pill here, let's substitute it with something else, or instead of drinking or whatever it is, getting that high for yourself, let's do this exercise instead. And you still get that chemical in your body where it's just like, all right, I don't need that drug today because I got what I needed out of it, kind of thing. So I feel like between the routine change and the dialectical behavior therapy, I feel like are very big on treatment. So before we end today's session, what is the best advice you can give somebody that's struggling with addiction? Mainly because, and the reason I asked that is because obviously family members and friends and whoever has gone through said struggles. And with your experience, what is the best thing you could tell somebody who's struggling with addiction?
Tell somebody or talk to them about it. Whether it's people, whether they don't talk to you after, you gotta. Because if you feel like you're alone and can't talk to anybody about it, is when it's going to intensify.
Right.
And it's a hard self-realization, but it starts and ends with you. You might have had traumatic shit happen to you as a kid, something, parents, whatever, abuse in any kind of form, that wasn't your fault. But you can't put the oh, well, I've had this happen to me, so I'm a drug addict.
Right.
Like at the end of the day, you have to choose to not do the drug. But definitely talk to someone about it, because you feel like you're all alone and can't talk to anyone. So like I said, when that'll intensify and it'll worsen.
Right.
But you also can't sit there and just blame it on and act like you're not helpless.
Yeah.
Putting the blame on other people and acting like you're helpless is not a good way to go about it.
Right. So before the end of every podcast, I'd like to read a quote that I find that's in relation to the topic that we're talking about. So today's quote I found from a Topher Kirby, and it reads, "You became who you needed to be in order to survive. But now it's time to become who you need to be so you can thrive in life. Change is coming, and it's time to embrace it." I think that's probably one of the most powerful quotes that I've read in a long time, simply because when people are going through a rough season or a rough trial in their life, that tunnel seems endless. Whether it's a financial struggle or it's, problems with your relationship or at home, and you're just going through that tunnel. And like today's topic, addiction feels like an endless dark tunnel. We're here on today's podcast to remind you guys, you don't have to be alone. You don't have to struggle by yourself. There are so many people in this world that care about you, that you may not realize that they care because of how they word things to you, or how they treat you because of your said struggles. I just want to remind you guys that you are so loved, and that everybody's life matters as much as anybody else's. You are not any less of a person because you struggle with mental health or addiction.
And if you talk about it, you'll find that a lot of people have similar struggles,
Right.
if not the same ones. I mean, everyone sometimes likes to act like their struggles and their problems like no one else is going through or no one else understands. But in reality, you can probably throw a rock and hit in a room full of 100 people, throw a rock and hit 5-10 people that have the same struggles or issues
Right.
going on, similar ones. Every situation is unique, but you know, growing up with abusive parents is growing up with abusive parents. They had just different variations, but you know, you're not alone.
Right. And you know, of course, I want to remind everybody that it's okay to be not okay. And again, you are so loved and you are needed here. And I want to forever remind you guys to be gentle with yourselves. And Caleb, thank you so much again for being on today's podcast. Again, he is one of our moderators in the mental health movement page on Facebook. Make sure you like, share, subscribe on Spotify, iTunes, or YouTube. Thank you guys again. And until next time, be gentle with yourselves.